And the nurse comes out, oh, what's wrong, what's wrong? And I said, I've never felt this before. This is not okay, I'm not okay.
They're there because they don't have anybody supporting them. Their boyfriends are leaving them, their parents don't even want to hear that they're pregnant, and that's why you're there. And you know, the doctors weren't asking Rebecca. Hi, my name is Vanessa Buzey, and today I have Rebeca McDonald from Lebanon County joining me, and she was gracious and willing to share her story, which I know will impact many lives. So Rebecca, thank you so much for doing this. I know it's not an easy one today, but may God bless you in sharing this story. And would you mind kind of starting us off with how we even know each other and how we ended up sitting here today?
Yeah, timing is everything. So we have the privilege to get to meet each other over a year ago now, I think, at the Lebanon Women's meetings.
Yeah. And just to kind of get us started, what was your life like growing up as a child into your teenage years?
It's a loaded question.
And you can continue, take as long as you need.
Yeah, so what was life like as a child? Well, to condense it, we came from Romania in 1985. At that time, our country, my mother country, was a communist country. So we got the privilege to finally come here legally. And I grew up in New York City up until my mid-20s. And life as a child in New York City is extremely colorful, if you will. It's very colorful. That'd probably be the best word. Very colorful. You have every nationality, which was amazing because I felt I fit in. It wasn't weird. But it had many challenges, needless to say, growing up in a massive city. And I grew up in a very religious type of environment at home. To give you an example, it was kind of like Mennonite Amish meets Jehovah's Witness type. So that was very intense compared to the city life we were living in. So yeah, it was had its many challenges, to say the least.
Yeah. And was there a certain belief system you grew up with that changed the way you view the world? And has that changed in your young adult years when you became more independent? So like what provoked that change at that time, if you did have that going on?
So a lot impacted my childhood. Back to the religious way I grew up, it impacted me in the context of we were taught, even if our hair was down or anything, that we were not going to be saved. So in that realm, it felt very, as I grew older, it impacted me in the context of I didn't believe that's what God really was saying. And I had to actually find the Lord and learn more about him much later on versus what I grew up believing. It was more legalistic, I believe you would say, the religious sect, right? Legalistic versus the grace and the love of Jesus Christ. And I didn't know about that till much later on in life.
And if I may ask, how did you come to know that? Was that your personal conviction, or did you have a group, a family, or support system that kind of made you change into that realization?
So I did not have a support group. As a matter of fact, it was just me and God. And my journey of life and coming out of much trauma from my childhood. Part of that religious sect, if you will, was also, they took things literal, like don't spare the child, use the rod in the literal context. And so abuse was introduced very early on in my childhood. Wow. And I grew up in a very toxic, abusive environment covered by a religious umbrella.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I definitely have heard similar stories, and it's something that many struggle to come by and through. So it's really a blessing to see you sitting here and being able to say that and realize that as well. So the decision to have an abortion, especially the first one when you're just starting to learn the whole process, it does not happen from easy circumstances, regardless if others see them as challenging or not. Can you share the story of how you experienced and that thought initially when you were trying to navigate options with everything else going on in life? Just kind of how that all came about and that first decision.
So growing up in a city as big as New York, and something I want to make clear, because for me, this sharing my story on this topic of abortion doesn't have a political umbrella over it. I believe this is more of a humanitarian, more of a life is precious and a gift regardless of political affiliation. And it's God for me now. But going back to my first experience and being exposed to the word even in itself, abortion, I was a teenager, 17. It was very common in high school at that time where young classmates would get pregnant. And Planned Parenthood in our city, New York, all the different boroughs, Queensborough where I grew up, almost at every, not corner, but there's lots of places to get an abortion in New York, let's put it that way, whether it was Planned Parenthood or separate. And so classmates would find themselves pregnant. And I was one of the kids in school. A lot of kids came to me for help. And again, having that background of a religious sect kind of repeated in my mind, but not from my heart place. It was more of a, well, if you do this, you're going to die. It was more from a condemnation versus understanding the process. So I try to help classmates as best as I could with what I knew growing up. But needless to say, a lot of them had abortions. And so that's how I first found out about abortions in itself. My first experience that I felt the need for an abortion, I was 18. I had just met my first husband. Well, we were married at this time, but he would soon be my first husband. And I got pregnant with my daughter, who is now 22 years old. And my first instinct was abortion. And it had a lot to do, you hear about the term, you're a product of your environment. And while there's some truth to that, I kind of like to challenge that. But there is some truth to it. And it did taint me, and it did cause almost an automatic response of, I'm 18, I can't do this. What if he's not going to be there? You know, all these things rose up in me.
Right.
And I had known that my mother in back home in a communist nation, they didn't have birth control there. So I had already known that my mother had her own experience with this. And I automatically just went to it, almost as if a brainwashing, if you will. Because growing up, even in the high schools, they would always give us a choice. They would say, you know, these are your choices. And it was almost like, I can't do this. I'm not married, like I can't do this. And it was very automatic, which I would discover much later on where it all stemmed from.
Yeah. After that first experience, did you notice shifts in your lifestyle, internal feelings, or behaviors that turned into consistent patterns, and, you know, anything else that you could add that happened throughout that timeline that may have fed into that pattern?
So, as I told you, my daughter is very much alive and well and here, and she's 22. So I ended up not going through that first experience and wanting an abortion at 18.
Okay.
I ended up having her and getting married to her dad. And though that marriage shortly ended thereafter, a couple of years, due to not so very good things that happened, it became me and my daughter. However, the birth of my daughter traumatized me to no end. In Maryland, where I gave birth in Annapolis. And I was induced about almost a month earlier that she would have been born. The first epidural did not go well. I ended up having a seizure during contractions giving birth. And then by the second one, it was just, I was out of my mind. 37 hours into it, and almost 2 days into it, they had threatened that if I didn't hurry up, I'll never forget these words as long as I live. If I didn't hurry up dilating, they were going to have a C-section on me. Though at this time, nothing was wrong with my daughter. Everything was fine, the monitors, I was fine. But it was as if I was just a number.
Yeah.
Hurry up, give birth, and get out. And let's just put it this way, it's not a hospital I would ever go back to. So I got very traumatized from that birth. I wasn't able to breastfeed. I had some issues with that. So I had to end up formula feeding Rachel. And that began years thereafter, a lot of trauma from that experience, I told myself I would never have another child.
Mm-hmm. Going into, what followed that, whatever you're comfortable with saying.
Sure.
Getting into that line of abortions and
sure.
how you went from having them and coming out of that.
So in March of 2005, I got out of the marriage with my daughter. We went back to New York City from Maryland at this time. And with all the trauma of the first marriage and the delivery with my daughter, and just, again, the upbringing, the environment, that you have a choice. You always have a choice. It is your body. It's never told to you as a teenager or young girl, where I grew up, what about the father? What about this person's feelings, that feelings? What about the baby? These things are never really talked about. It's very heightened. It's your body. It's your choice what you do with it. So that was my way of thinking at that time. Well, they have to be right. I mean, in theory, it's almost a brainwashing, if you will. I don't know how else to describe it, because you really start believing it yourself. And now, if you're someone that comes from trauma like myself, an abusive childhood, if you have trauma delivering a child, if you have trauma with a wrong relationship, wherever abuse is, whether it's verbal, physical, or mental, or a combination of those three, you will see the following come out of it. And so I found myself pregnant about a year after I left Maryland. And I said, there's no way. I promised myself I wasn't gonna have any more children. At this point in time, I had long left the religious way I was raised. I was 21, and at this time, they started coming out with medicines where they, by 22, 23, and 24, you could take, it was two pills. One would take in the office with the doctors, and then one at home, where you could have the abortion at home.
Yeah.
And at that time, it felt like, okay, if I take the pills, that will be a lot easier and better than, it's almost like they convince you, the doctor's, it's not as bad. It's just a pill. It's just a fetus. And you can go home and you take the second pill. At this time, my daughter was about 2.5 years old. And the first pill in the office, you don't really know what's going on.
You don't think anything of it.
You don't. You think it's just like taking a Tylenol, if you will. But when I got home that evening and I had to take the second pill, it was closely around almost 10 o'clock p.m. And the amount of pain and the amount of blood and the amount of horror that starts happening to your body triggered the trauma of giving birth to my daughter. But I knew it was different because I wasn't gonna have a child at the end of it. And it's not until you're sitting on that toilet that you realize you're literally giving up. You're literally forcing your child out of you. And you don't want to think of it as I'm killing my unborn. You don't want to think of it as a child. Actually, as we, like, when we say child, it's almost like you have to tell yourself you have to do this. There's no other option. It's almost like I had to convince myself. There's no other option. I'm already a single mom, and I have to do this in order to make it.
Yeah. Going from that, I just can't imagine the days that passed on, what you had to go through. I'm sorry that you had to feel that way, and I just know that what went through your mind goes through so many other people's minds. The girls, they get convinced that this is safe, you don't have to think anything of it, you take it like candy, but they don't realize that when you go through that process, you're essentially, it's almost like giving birth, but you're promised to give birth to someone that's not alive anymore. And it's traumatic, whether it's something that you chose and you wanted to do it or you got coerced to do it, it's still something that it won't leave your mind.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say that it's not, because if you just bury it and you pretend like you, enjoyed the process or that you were okay with it, it's gonna show up 30 years later or whatever other time frame, and it'll hit you and you won't even realize that all this time it was the trauma response. So it's always good to address it. It's difficult to talk about it, to go through it, but it's important.
Yeah.
And it's what's going to not only change your life, but change other lives and give a voice to those that aren't there with us today.
Yeah.
There's certain things we can't bring back, certain people, but if we talk about it, it kind of brings life back into it.
Well, that's where the first part began.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it at that time. I thought that would be it. This will never happen again. But something, as I'm sitting here, it becomes almost, dare I compare it to drugs? Dare I compare it to any substance, whether legal or not? You take your first hit and you say, oh, I'll never do that again. Or you run a red light, I'll never do that again. Or just think of any scenario. Well, I thought it was gonna be, oh wow, this was horrific and I'm definitely not okay, but I'm never doing this again. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna ask God for forgiveness. I knew that much at that time and I'll be okay. Well, it began my dark decade, I call it, of my 20s. My entire 20s became the darkest decade of my life. And I became an abortion serialist, if you will. I label that because it became normal that if I was pregnant, no matter what relationship I was in, abortion is not a big deal. I went through it before, and as it's dark, I will say this, it's very dark, and I will call it what it is. It's very demonic, and people, whether they believe in the Lord or not, whether they believe in the supernatural or not, whether they even know who God is or not, there is good and evil in this world, and even the atheists would agree. And there's a darkness that comes over you that you can't describe or explain. And it almost numbs you, because then it's like, yeah, I made it through, it was hard, but I almost undermined, I undermined it. It's like you become numb, you justify it. And little did I know at that point I had opened doors to this darkness that would lead to having over 9 abortions in my decade of 20s. In particular, again, back to this pill abortion, I had 6 surgical, but I decided to do the pill again because I was familiar.
Yeah.
And then the one time I had done it again, I was now in my mid-20s, and my older sister Laura, she ended up being there for me. And as she describes it, the darkness that came out of me and the anguish and the agony and the cries for help and begging God still haunts her. Even when we talk about it now, she still has flashbacks of that abortion I had. And it was really horrific because it was at the latest part of when you could take the pills. Mm-hmm. And that one tore me apart, my body, everything. I don't know, it wasn't like the first time or the second. At this point, this was easily my third. So at that point, I felt, well, instead of going through this myself at home, again, they tell you there's options. Yeah. If this doesn't work for you. So I went back to the doctor, told him how horrific it was, my third experience. And he said, well, if you ever find yourself in this situation again, you might want to opt in for a surgical. They put you to sleep. Mm. You'll wake up and it's not as painful. Yeah. They take care of it for you. So instead of saying, what's going on, Rebecca, I kept it in the back of my mind and thought, okay, well, that might be an option if I ever get in again. And I found myself in that option 6 times over.
I'm sorry. I'm kind of realizing a pattern here is, instead of, like you said, for the doctors asking you in a safe space even, they're not asking about the trauma. Where's the mental health, you know? It's just, let's get her in, let's get her out, and let's keep doing it. And even that alone is worth looking into. Even if you're pro-choice, why not look into that? If we're trying to fix an issue of mental health in this country, why are we not talking about that in the realm where there's big business going on? Especially knowing that many people that go to those centers, to the abortion centers, they're not there just because they woke up and thought, well, today I want to go there. They're there because they don't have anybody supporting them. Their boyfriends are leaving them, their parents don't even want to hear that they're pregnant, and that's why you're there. And the doctors weren't asking Rebecca, weren't asking you why you're there. Do you have somebody by your side?
No.
So even that alone is worth looking into why the pro-life movement exists today.
The trauma that happens, Vanessa, the trauma that happens after each abortion, you don't even realize until almost like it's too late, because every time it gets worse. And you become more dark and more numb, and it's almost like isolation, like a prison, if you will. It becomes so normalized and it's so unnatural, but yet it becomes your nature.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, what's one more? Well, you've been there before. And the thing is that's really disturbing is when I started the surgical abortions, they don't let you see the screen. It was in Long Island City, New York. It's just very, and it's like an assembly line. You wait in the waiting area, then they call you up in the triage, they take your vitals and all that, and they look for the baby's heartbeat, because they wouldn't do, that's the other thing, they wouldn't do a surgical unless you had a heartbeat. And let me backtrack, because this is important. Part of me choosing the pill was, well, do I need a heartbeat? Do I not? If I could just, you could just take it. Mm-hmm. Whereas with the surgical, they wanted the heartbeat on the monitor. They wouldn't do a surgical abortion on me at that time without a heartbeat. So I had to be at least 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. And to be safe, they would say 6 weeks and a couple days. Mm-hmm. And so I never saw, and I won't call it a fetus anymore, I never saw my baby each and every time on that screen. So you're so detached, you don't even, because you can't physically see it, you feel everything, but you don't see it. So it's almost like it's a manipulation of sorts, and they make you feel like, oh, you're not crazy, like it's okay, like there's no reason to be sad, this is just a fetus, and you believe that so you can go through the abortion.
Right. Yeah, and that is why many pregnancy centers, they emphasize the importance of seeing and having the ultrasound, because before making that, informed decision, if you will, at least see what you are about to let go. And that often changes the minds of mothers. So that is a very interesting point that you made there. And what was that turning point in your life that caused you to shift personal values and become who you are today, along with having your miracle child who is with us today?
So 2009. 2009 is a year, I would call it my turning point year. I was in one of my last loosey relationships, I will say. And I call it loose relationships because I was, again, such a traumatized child from adolescence to, being a young lady to womanhood and a failed marriage, and abuse kind of just followed me instead of me getting taken care of. And somebody saying, do you need help, Rebecca? Like, what is happening? You are now coming to us. This is your 6th surgical abortion in Long Island City, New York. Like, why are you here 6 times? Nobody asks. They just say, oh, I understand. And it comes off as sympathy. Mm-hmm. But something shifted this time. And regrettably, I hurt, and for his privacy reasons, I'm not going to mention his name.
Of course.
But he was a very loving, sweet boyfriend at that time. That was also a really good stepfather figure to my daughter. And I remember him begging me not to. And I remember him crying. But I remember not feeling his pain or feeling anything. But for some reason, this time it was different than with any other guys. I questioned it. even though I couldn't feel his pain and he was begging me not to and crying, I still questioned it from a logical standpoint. But yet I couldn't feel it yet. So I called one of my friends in New York, as I did many times, because at this point I'm living in Pennsylvania. And he told me, sure, I'll help you again. And even this friend that helped me other times, he had said, Rebecca, don't you think maybe like this is not good for you? And he went from being the supportive, great, guy friend to actually him checking in like, I'm all for, you're right, it's your body. And that mindset that we both grew up in, but he started getting concerned. And I just kind of laughed and I said, yeah, I think this is finally the last one. He said, but that was the last time. And then the last time, and when is the last time? And he never got serious with me like this before. And yet I didn't feel what his concern, but I questioned it. This is the first time I'm now questioning what is really wrong with me. And I remember being in his apartment before I had my 6th abortion and saying, God, I don't really know you, but like, if you're really there, like, you need to talk to me. I don't know you the way I think I should know you. And this is not okay. Like, I know, this person is crying now, that I'm not even taking into consideration that he's a dad. And suddenly I started feeling something, but not enough to stop it. But the feelings began, the awakening, if you will, where my soul was now trying to get a hold of me. And I go back to the same place as per usual. And this time was different. When I went in for my sonogram, again, they don't show you, the technician is doing it, and I just started screaming at her. And she said, what's wrong? Do you need a minute? And I said, no, you don't get it. This is my 6th one. And she said, oh, that's okay. We don't judge here. And I said, you don't understand, ma'am. You're going to turn that monitor around. And she said, no, we don't do that. And I said, you're going to do that. And I used some foul language. I had a really foul mouth at that time. And every explicit under the sun. And I said, ma'am, you will effing and all this, turn that screen around. And she said, no, I don't think this is a good idea. And she begins a 5-minute negotiation with me. And at this point, I will tell you, because this burns really deeply within me, I almost felt like I wanted to get violent with her. And it's weird because I never felt that before. And I felt this rage come up inside of me, not realizing the rage is trauma of repeated abortions. And I remember just wanting to get up off the bed. And I wanted to shake her and I said to turn the screen. And I don't know what must have happened with her, but she looked at me and she said, I will this time. And the screen turned around and I saw the baby. To this day, I can see the baby. The heart, I can still see it. I have a very photographic memory. And I said, okay. I see it, it's real. And she said, yeah. And I said, okay. And I just couldn't talk to her. I'm still angry with her. And I realized at this point, this will be it. Like, I actually saw the baby. The way I saw my Rachel, my daughter. Because keep in mind, this whole time, I still have a baby at home. Well, she's growing up now at this point. She's 7 and 8. And, the memories of seeing Rachel on the sonogram and having not seen any of my abortions till this very moment. This is my 9th. And I immediately, when she saw my reaction, this was the fastest time. They gave me my gown and rushed me to the back. It was really fast.
Wow.
And I remember feeling so rushed, and I was like, wait. They're like, no, it's fine. And moving fast, and 2 nurses came and grabbed me, and I'm emotional. And I said, wait, just give me a minute. They're like, no, it's okay. Come on. And you're ready. It's so this would be the triage here. Then there's I remember the whole way going down this way, the corridor, you make a right, and then a left, and then to the right would be the room where I went in many other times. And they lay me down really quickly. And this is something that is not spoken about. And I really wish people would understand. And I know women, I'm going to look at the camera now, whichever one. I know women out there that have been put in this situation where it's called twilight sleep. And they lay you down, and my right hand is to my right, and it's They put a strap on the right hand, your left hand, your, Lord have mercy, I'm so emotional, sorry.
Okay.
The left hand is tied to your left. Again, there's a strap, and you're like this. Think of stirrups, but in reverse now for your arms. Then your right leg and your left leg are spread wide open, and they're strapped on each side of your ankle. And this is how I laid. And it literally looks like the Holy Cross position, except your legs are not together. They're wide open for them to go in and take out your child. And right before they give me twilight sleep is what it's called, because it goes into your right, wherever your IV is. In my case, it was always on the right. Mm-hmm. And they put in the twilight sleep. They inject you with it, the anesthesia, if you will. I call it twilight because you are gone within faster seconds, faster than even when I had anesthesia for medical purposes later on in life. And it's almost like a drug. It's the bizarrest thing because it's instant. It's faster than, like I said, anesthesia at the hospitals when I needed it. And right before they did it, I started begging the nurse. I said, I think I'm done. I think I'm done. No, I think I'm done. They're like, no, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. I said, I don't think I want to. Mm-hmm. And she ejected me.
So no, it wasn't even your choice that they honored
at that
time.
Point, I said, I don't think I want to. And they said, it's going to be okay. And they ejected me. And I still can see myself before she injected me. And then as soon as they inject you, I'm not kidding you when I tell you, it's not even half of a second. You don't even go 1 and 2 for a second. It's like less than that. And I was gone. And I woke up in the most horrific pain in the recovery room where it's like a slaughterhouse, because the way they have the beds, it's these tiny beds that you are on. There's a curtain on each side and you're lined up like this, and there's several women. It could be 30, 40 women in the recovery room.
My goodness.
And I woke up screaming in pain. And the nurse comes out, oh, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I said, I've never felt this before. This is not okay. I'm not okay. And she said, well, your uterus is contracting really bad. And we'll come back. I'll give you some Motrin. They gave me Motrin. Still wouldn't go away. And at this point, I felt like I was being punished by God again, going back to my legalistic days of the religion I was raised, thinking, well, I'm going to hell and I'm the worst person. I'm a murderer. All the condemnation flooded me like never before. And I just started feeling very condemned and thinking, okay, well, this is what I get. This is what I deserve for going through this for the 6th time now. And so she comes in, gives me the Motrin, doesn't work. I'm still crying. I'm still asking for help. And she said, well, here's a heating pad. And this is just, and at this point, I didn't realize I've had so many abortions. I have destroyed my body. I have hurt myself so much. And as God is merciful as He is, and as I know the Lord today, He wanted me to remember. It's over 15 years later, I still remember. As if I'm there now. I can still see myself in that bed. I can still see just everything, the smells, the blood everywhere. I can still feel the pain in my memory as if it's happening. And I told God, I said, okay, God. And it was the first time I ever made a deal, if you will. And I said, God, if you take this pain away from me, I'll never do this again. And I said, I promise you now, and I never, ever, ever talked to God about this before. And I said, if you do this one thing, if you just take this away from me, I will never, never do this again. And it was like maybe a couple hours later, and I started feeling like I could get up and walk. And at that point, they were like already rushing you to get out of there because the next girls are coming in.
No consideration to even take a breather.
No, there's no counselors, nothing. And I left out of there distraught. And I'll never forget, there was a nun. And I had seen her several times before, and I never talked to her, never again time of day. She looked at me, and I said, I'm not doing it anymore. She said, okay, my child. She had her roseberries, and she started praying over me. And then my friend came in his car and picked me up, and I said, never again.
Rebecca, you are one of the strongest people that I've come to know. Even just now, I'm at a loss for words. I'm holding back tears. To see how God is gracious even when you think this is the last straw, that you don't deserve for another chance. I just can't imagine. How did you even move on from then? What was your next day like? I mean, you can't just wake up and say, that didn't happen. Now, that's
my journey
so
began.
Much to your story.
Yeah.
I didn't even know about all of this. Of course, I know, when we talked earlier, and I was just, I just felt something like there's so much that you have to share. You have this very, life-filled personality, and I could just tell there's something behind you. You have this fire inside of you.
That's God.
And yeah.
That's God.
And now I'm like, yeah, of course. How did your faith kind of grow from that? I feel like now I have to ask, but it seems like you kind of came back to God at the same time that you changed your mind about how you see abortion, which I'm not saying that faith is always the reason, but it seems to be a pattern here, and maybe that's something worth thinking about.
So for me, that last time became so real that I just looked at myself when I got back to Pennsylvania and I said, you just committed murder. And I remember thinking like, yeah, but you did it other times. That wasn't murder. Why was this one murder? And I'll tell you why I really feel strong about this and why I use the term murder. Because the sixth time, when I saw it, the sixth surgical time, not all of the abortions, like, because I had the pills, but the sixth surgical time, I saw the baby. Mm-hmm. I saw its little heart. I remember it go so fast on the screen. And then I just kept thinking, you just killed it. You just, like, it. But I never said that any other time. Mm-hmm. I never felt that any other time. Mm-hmm. And I just started praying, and I said, well, I'm just like the person in jail that committed murder. And I remember, again, growing up, I read the Bible. And growing up, I remember, reading about God saying, like, he'll forgive even the murderer, and he'll forgive, and there's redemption. And I thought, I'm just like those people. I'm not in jail for committing murder. This is celebrated and normalized, and it's fine. But I literally just killed my child. And it's not the first time, but it was the first time I felt that, I heard that, I called it that by myself in my own house. And at that point, I remember just feeling like the condemnation of the world. I can't begin to tell you. And I knew, so part of me knew it wasn't God, but I couldn't help but feel condemned. And I just, not in any formal way or any special way, I just started crying and screaming to God and just on the floor and having these meltdowns, if you will, that would carry me over into years later. And the Lord just gently, I remember just feeling like the worst person, I don't even deserve my daughter. I used to tell myself, like, how do I even deserve her? She's like perfect, but yet I killed all her sisters and brothers. And I just, all these waves. And I just felt God reaching down on me, and I still love you. And then I was angry, which is really strange because I couldn't love me.
Right.
And I remember thinking, well, if I can't love me, how can you? How can you love me? Like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm dark. There's nothing good about me. All I have is trauma, abortions. Like, why would you love me? And little by little, by seeking him out, I started finding different local churches, and nobody ever, I used to think people could see me going through this behind the scenes. I didn't realize, like, when I went to church, this is going to sound silly, but I'm sure other women can experience this, where you'll go to church and you think, does everybody know why I'm here? Like, do people see me? Because you feel so raw.
Yeah.
And you're so vulnerable. You wonder, does everybody see you for what you've done? And then you learn to hide it. And, okay, well, I'll never talk about it. Maybe if I just, like, really compartmentalize and really hide it, it'll go away. If I just hide it deep enough, I can function. If I never have to discuss it, did it really happen? And you start, like, trying to get away from it just to function. Mm-hmm. And then the test came. The biggest test of my life. February 15. This is now February 15 of 2014. I find out I'm pregnant yet again. No pregnancy from 2009 till February 15 of 2014. And I was already 2 weeks pregnant, actually. I know exactly when my son was conceived, February 1st of 2014. And it was miraculous because by this point, I had still had several relationships. I wasn't back where I needed to be with the Lord, but I was on my journey back. Okay. And I was going back to the Lord as his daughter, not in a legalistic way. And the journey I didn't realize would be so long and hard, but yet he was patient with me. So even though there was many years, he didn't give any more children. And I remember previous to the 2014 pregnancy, I remember thinking, wow, I was with someone else for 3 years, and I said, wow, I guess I'm never going to have children. I made my promise in 2009, but because the Lord saw me doing what I did, he's probably not going to give me any more children. And just to rewind, in 2012, I had a dream of having a boy, and I was still with this person, and shortly thereafter, in 2013, me and this person ended. And I said, oh, I guess that dream wasn't really real, and that vision wasn't from God, I thought. And not knowing that my time is not God's timing, and just because I had a vision and a dream didn't mean it was going to happen right when I thought it was going to happen. But God gave me graciously a preview, almost as if to say, my daughter, I love you so much, that's not true. So I'm going to give you this dream that of this little boy. It's not true. Doesn't mean you'll never have any more children, but I'm God, and because you're coming to me now, and you are my daughter because you're saying you want to be with me, and I'm your father, and you want me, I will be giving you another baby, but in my timing. And I didn't know that yet. I thought I was being silly, and like, oh, I just had this, and it was a very vivid dream, and I remember this dream. I called my best friend Sarah, and I said, oh my word, like I'm having a baby boy, and I can't see the father. And she started laughing, and she's like, well, was I there? And I was like, yeah, you're there. And she's a midwife, and you helped me give birth. This is 2012. So now back to February 15 of 2014, I find out on 6 different pregnancy tests that sure enough I'm pregnant. And the devil didn't let up on me. And at this time, ironically, even after everything I had gone through, even with my journey back with the Lord, I suddenly felt, because me and his dad were not okay, maybe I need to do it again. And it was like, I've been delivered, I've been forgiven, but yet this darkness came back. It was like, I can't even begin to describe the war that ended up happening in me. And I discussed it with my son's father, and he said, well, you know what? That's fine, I'm not ready either. So we decided to go to Planned Parenthood in Reading, Pennsylvania. And they now moved their office, but at this time it was on the corner where it had just a tiny bit of sidewalk in the front door. The front door is on the corner of the building. And then right across diagonal was this massive, beautiful church, I believe Lutheran, but it's a brownstone, beautiful church. I had called my mother on the way down there, and my son's father, I said, yeah, I think we're gonna do it. And I remember I was driving, and I drove there, and I walked into the Planned Parenthood, and there was a very flamboyant, if you will, gentleman at the desk with a very bubbly personality, as if he was serving ice cream. And he literally had little hair and a little ponytail, some hair here, and he was very, very, very excited. And I remember being kind of like taken aback by him. I wasn't sure what he was so excited about. But not friendly, just excitable, not friendly. And he goes, here's your clipboard, and go ahead and fill it out. And I heard a scream. I mean, it was not a regular scream, just a massive scream, which followed with more screams. And I looked at my son's father, and I said, do you hear that? And he goes, yeah, what's going on here? And I said, she's in pain, there's something happening to her, either they're in the middle of it, something, I don't know, I've never been to Planned Parenthood. Remember, I went to Long Island City in New York, and it wasn't Planned Parenthood, it was another one of those abortion clinics, I forget the name now. It's under the train tracks of Long Island City. And so I hear the screams again, and at this point, I'm like, something's wrong, and I just felt this fluttering, this enormous amount of feelings, and all of a sudden, like a lion roaring out of me of protection. I can't describe it. I don't know how else to describe it besides I felt like this fire, this feeling of this is sick. And I just started screaming, you guys are killing babies. I am not killing my baby. I threw the clipboard. I looked at my son's father and I just ran. I ran like I was being chased, and there was not much sidewalk. I almost ran to the road, almost got hit by a car. Ironically, he pulled me back. And I just collapsed right across the street once I made it across the street on that Brownstone Lutheran church. And I started ringing the doorbell on that church like a mad woman, begging for someone to come out. And I just landed on those steps and I just cried and just pleaded to God. I was like, Lord, help me. I can't believe I'm here again. I don't want to do it. This is your son. And I knew it was a boy. My son's father thought I was so silly because he's like, how can you know you're only... But I knew it was a boy, and I called him a boy from the minute I found out. And then I just started confessing to the Lord. I said, you showed me this in 2012. You told me I was going to have a boy. And I smelled Dominican food on the corner. And I suddenly, after crying and weeping and just begging God and waiting for someone, nobody opened up at that church. I just felt this sudden hunger. And I looked at my son's father and I said, I'm going to go eat with this money. Instead of paying for this abortion, I'm going to go eat. And we're going to eat good and we're going to take leftovers. And we went in and I ordered probably everything on that menu. I went home with like 6 canisters, and the devil lost. And my son is very much alive. And here's where it gets really, really good. The doctors told me I wasn't going to make it with him. They said I was high risk. They said I should give birth almost 2 months early. They wanted to do a C-section. They said there's no way I could physically give birth at 31 years old because he was too big. Vanessa, October 30th, my son was born at 12:57 p.m. at home in a water tub. My best friend, a midwife. He was 13 pounds,
wow,
23.5 inches. Yep, 2 feet long, just about.
Yeah.
And he was born to the hymn, because he lives, I can face tomorrow.
Praise God. Wow.
And he lost. The devil lost.
Amen.
And he was a big, and the best part, nothing happened to me physically. There was no pain. I didn't tear. I didn't have any trauma. I got to breastfeed right out of the water birth in my bedroom, in my home. My best friend Sarah made my delivery amazing. Amazing. But the doctors told me I couldn't, and they wanted to take him out of me September 3rd via C-section. I told them they're crazy, and they wrote on my medical chart, no, you're crazy. You can't have this child. And then they wrote on my medical chart, she keeps saying God will save her. And I'll tell you what, not only did he save me, he gave me the best experience. And my son is super healthy. He breastfed so well, 6 months. He's now 5'5", 11.5 in bends, and he's 11.
Wow. Wow.
And it's just the greatest joy. And I haven't had any more since. I stayed a whole decade single after that. As the Lord put it on my heart, it didn't work out with his father. And I never wanted to be a single mom again. But can I tell you, God is so good that even though there was a 12-year gap between my daughter and my son, even though I had a decade of darkness, he blessed me with my beautiful boy, James. And the name James came from after I left Planned Parenthood that day. I've heard in my dream, yet again, another dream, I need you to go read the book of James. I hadn't opened my Bible in quite some time.
That's right.
And I got in the bathtub. I love taking my tubs of Epsom salt, and I read the book of James. And I literally heard another dream, you're going to call me James, Mommy. You will call me James. And it was the brother of Jesus. And the whole book of James is so beautiful. And my son is literally my promised child to God from 2009 of no more.
That's incredible, Rebecca. I mean, how can you even transition from that? May God bless you. May God bless James. And I remember meeting James for the first time. If that's
yes,
that's
James. Yes.
And man, he's. I mean, I know that you're his mother. I can tell you has that same energy, that same light, and I'm just so excited to see where God takes him in life.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
It's going to be incredible. He has his own testimony.
Yes, he does.
If you think about it,
Yes.
so in a way, God multiplies that.
Yes.
You know, He's definitely going to use you and James and everyone else. So, if you could tell one thing to parents who are going through difficult decisions with their developing sons or daughters, what would it be? And if it's more than one thing, you can absolutely.
While the mother's pregnant, you mean?
Yeah, sure.
I would say trust in God. There's no other way. There's no other way to say this. Whether you believe or you don't believe, trust in God. He makes a way where there is no way. He will literally take care of you better than anyone and anything ever could. And I'm so thankful that in 2014, I had faith, Vanessa. So much faith. I could literally have given it to everyone in the community. I can't explain that faith. It was monumental. And faith means to believe for what you cannot see, to trust in God, even though we can't physically see him, to trust that he will take you out of whatever you're in, whether you're in darkness, whether you're struggling. So when you're pregnant, there's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah.
But God doesn't give us something that's not good for us. And how could God ever create life and give it to us and it not be good?
Yeah.
Life is good no matter what. But we can either choose to kill life or nurture life. And I'm very blessed that I have a daughter and a son that I got to nurture and not just bring them into the world, but nurture them to life physically and life spiritually. Because there's two lives, the one we live now and the one later on, whether we go with the Lord or we don't. Mm-hmm. And if you're struggling as a parent, I encourage you to pray. No matter what your beliefs are, pray. I lived a decade without God. I never prayed to him. I didn't even believe at one point. And when I did, and when I cried out to him, what he's done in my life, he'll do for anybody. And he's still working on me. Yeah. We're never finished.
That's right. It's a lifelong journey.
Yes. And it's not about perfection either. And everybody's story is different. But to trust the Lord is the best advice I could give anyone. He gives you the life and he takes life. Don't take the life yourself.